Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Hello. This is the Recovery Support Services ECHO. My name is Andrea Havler, and I will be your facilitator for today's class. Again, thank you to all of you for being here. Before we start, I want to remind you that this session is being recorded for later distribution. However, the information that you see on the chat will not appear on the recordings. So we encourage you to add your names, email addresses, and organizations. This information will be used to confirm your attendance to this class. And especially if you're seeking CEs or CMEs today, we definitely want you to identify yourself in the chat. If you're joining via phone, please make sure that you send us an email letting us know that you were here today. If you need captionings for this class, you may navigate to the bottom part of this Zoom window and click on the captioning feature. Like always, there is no personal health information allowed in this conversation, and this refers specifically to our case presenters. We will discuss the case without using any information or without mentioning anything that could help us identify the person in question. I know you all know this, but we have to be reminded of that at every session. That's the way it is. And we appreciate in advance your following these guidelines. Thank you. And the sessions are for all of you. We want to hear your perspectives, your opinions, so please feel free to unmute yourselves and be part of the conversation at any time. Let's move now to our introductions from the Recovery Support Services Hub. Sean Wright, how are you today? Do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Hi, Andrea. Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Sean Wright, Program Director for Abilene Recovery Council's Recovery Support Services, peer recovery coach, and a member of the HUD team. Great to see you.
Thank you. Richard.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Richard Hamner, part of Be Well Texas, Recovery Support Services Program Manager, person in long-term recovery, and HUB member. I'm glad everyone's here.
Thank you, Richard. Jasmine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Vidal, and I'm the ECHO coordinator for the Recovery Support Services ECHO. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And our case presenter, Joseph de la Cruz. Would you introduce yourself to the group, please?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph de la Cruz, Program Director for Aliviana Recovery Support Services here in El Paso, Texas. I will be presenting the case in a bit for everybody to catch on to and give me some feedback on it, please.
Of course. Thank you so much. And now I think we can move to a presentation. We have today our case presenter. Her name is Monica Garcia. If you could please introduce yourself briefly and start your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Monica. Yes, my name is Monica Garza. I am the project director and attorney with the Opioid Use Disorder Project with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for accepting to present for our Recovery Support Services ECHO today. Whenever you're ready, we can start with your presentation. Would you like to share your screen then?
Yes, I'm going to do that right now.
Sure. Thank you. Take your time.
Okay. My name is Monica Garza. Like I said, I'm the project director and attorney for Opioid Use Disorder Project with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. I'll talk a little bit more about what our project does towards the end. This presentation was meant to be a general overview of Americans with Disabilities Act and how it relates to substance use disorder. Just the normal disclosures. I have no relevant financial relationship with the commercial interest to disclose, and the views and opinions I express are not do not reflect the official position of UT Health San Antonio or Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, which is my employer. So just to provide an overview and structure of the American with Disabilities Act, the American Disabilities Act ensures that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else, and this includes people with addiction to alcohol, opioids, and other substance use disorders. The ADA is broken down into 3 different titles that cover different types of discrimination based on disability. Title I covers employment. Title II covers state and local governments, such as courts, which I'll kind of discuss later on. And Title III, which is places of public accommodation like businesses. The definition of disability under the ADA, so something that somebody must show in order to be protected under the ADA, is the person must have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. When the ADA states major life activities, they mean things like hearing, sleeping, walking, caring for yourself, sitting, anything that you can think of that would be a major life activity on a day-to-day basis. A person can also show, to be covered under the ADA, can also show a history of an impairment. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a major impairment that affects day-to-day activities now, but it could be a history of an impairment, or a person regarding as having an impairment. So not necessarily if it's true, it could be just like a rumor that a person has used drugs in the past, they're also covered under the ADA. The ADA protects a person in recovery who is no longer engaging in illegal use of drugs and who can show one of those 3 definitions of disability that we just discussed. So somebody that's currently engaging in the use of illegal drugs is not covered under the ADA, and I'll cover that a little bit more. Illegal drugs includes typical drugs we're used to, like heroin and cocaine, and also prescription medications like hydrocodone if there's no prescription, if somebody's using more than prescribed, or using a fraudulent prescription. So as mentioned in the previous slide, ADA protects a person in recovery. So to be in recovery, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in a formal rehab program. It just means that recovery can be in recovery from a substance use disorder, that a person has ceased engaging in illegal use of drugs, even if it's on their own, or they could be participating in a supervised rehab program, including court-ordered or otherwise, or successfully rehabilitated on their own. The ADA doesn't protect individuals currently taking illegal drugs and former casual drug users. There must have been addiction involved. So if there's just once or twice use of drugs, but there's not an actual addiction involved, ADA doesn't protect that individual. Now, this is all on a case-by-case basis. So this is going to be determined by the administrative agency that a claim is filed under, or a court that a lawsuit is filed with. For the ADA, when we say a current individual currently taking illegal drugs, current means recently enough to justify a reasonable belief that a person's drug use is a real and ongoing problem. And like I said, this is all on a case-by-case basis. So if a person files this with a court, when they file a lawsuit, the current use will be decided on a case-by-case basis. So now that I've kind of provided a general overview of who's covered under the ADA, I wanted to discuss some scenarios so that I can kind of better explain how somebody would be covered. In scenario 1, Leo has been drug-free since high school. It's now 10 years later, and he's applying to work at a local pizza place. He's worked at pizza places before. The employer refuses to hire him because she went to high school with him and knows about his past addiction. So would this person be covered under the ADA? The answer is yes. He's protected under the ADA because he has a history of an impairment. He's no longer using any illegal drugs, and there's a good indication that there's not an ongoing problem. his potential employer violated the ADA when she refused to hire Leo because of his recovery status. So this would be something that would be filed under Title I, under employment. It could either be filed with the EEOC because it's employment discrimination, or it could be a lawsuit filed with state or federal court. So with scenario 2, the project that I'm the director of currently at Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, we provide free legal services to those affected by opioid use disorder. So this particular scenario is one that we've seen a couple of cases on. We've taken a couple cases like this. Different facts, of course, different names, but it's similar to cases that we've seen on a regular basis. So Cameron has 2 kids, ages 3 and 6. The mother of the children filed a SAPSR. So a SAPSR is a suit affecting parent-child relationship. That's the type of lawsuit typically filed when one parent is trying to put the other on child support or trying to establish a visitation schedule. You would file a suit affecting parent-child relationship to get in front of a judge and prove that all up. So Cameron is taking prescribed methadone for his substance use disorder. So that's prescribed. He's going through a formal rehab program. He's being prescribed methadone by a physician. He has his first appearance in family court. In bigger jurisdictions, family court there's one specific judge for just these types of cases. In smaller ones, it could just be the district judge that's hearing these cases. He asked the judge for visitation to see his children every other weekend. Asking for every other weekend is like standard possession. Standard possession is the first, third, and fifth Friday of the month that you would pick up the children for the weekend. That's kind of the presumption. To get less or more, you have to show why you shouldn't follow standard possession. So in this case, Cameron's just asking for standard possession for his children. The judge orders a urinalysis test. Judges typically will order a urinalysis test if one or other, whatever side, even if they just allege any drug use in the past, the judge typically will just order a urinalysis test just to be thorough. And Cameron tested positive for methadone. The judge says that she will not grant any kind of visitation until he tests negative for methadone. In this case, Cameron is protected by the ADA because he has a history of addiction. The judge is denying visitation because she's treating methadone as if it's illegal. And she's kind of putting herself in the place of the physician because she's asking him to just stop cold turkey. In some cases, I've heard clients state, well, I'll stop eventually, but I can't just stop cold turkey because that's not what my physician advises. And the judges have kind of said, well, no, you need to stop now. So that judge would be violating the ADA. However, she's treating the methadone as illegal. However, the methadone is legally prescribed. The methadone is helping Cameron function. He cannot just stop cold turkey. And the use of methadone by itself cannot justify a refusal to let Cameron see his children on the weekend. So if there's other reasons that the opposing party would present, then of course, visitation could be denied. But if the use of methadone is the only reason that they're using, that would be a violation of the ADA. Now, the cases we have like this are currently still in litigation, so I don't know how they're going to turn out, but we are going to fight it until the client is allowed to see his children. Scenario 3, same story with Cameron, except that this time he goes back to court again and the judge orders another urinalysis, and this time he tests positive for methadone and cocaine. In this case, Cameron would not be protected under the ADA because the ADA does not protect individuals who are currently using illegal drugs. So it would only protect if it was just methadone and it's something he's being legally prescribed. So now that we know what's protected, who's protected, and what scenarios are, what can you do if your rights have been violated? You could either file an administrative complaint, or you could file a formal lawsuit. For an administrative complaint, you would file that with the state or federal agency that has jurisdiction over the type of complaint involved. For employment, it would be the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC. And you have to file that within 300 days of the alleged discriminatory act. For housing issues, like if somebody is denied particular housing accommodation or reasonable accommodation with housing, you could file that with Housing and Urban Development. And if there's a civil rights issue, would be with the Department of Justice or Civil Rights Division. Or you could file a lawsuit. If somebody files a lawsuit, I would suggest that they hire an attorney to do that, but you could always represent yourself with that. It gets complicated with the lawsuit because there's statute of limitations and other rules you have to file. For Title I, for employment types of cases, a person needs to file that within 180 days from the date discrimination took place. For Title II and III, so with state and local governments and places of public accommodation, that would all depend on the state's personal injury statute of limitation. So it's going to depend what state that occurred in. If somebody is successful in filing an administrative complaint or a lawsuit, there would be different remedies they could receive. For employment, they could receive back pay. They could have their job reinstated. They could be given a promotion they were denied because of this discrimination, or they could be given reasonable accommodations. For housing, remedies they could receive would be they're given reasonable accommodations that they requested. They could require, the agency or the court could require a housing provider to change their policies and practices, or they could receive monetary damages. Public areas, such as with businesses, there could be a court order telling the business or entity that they must stop discriminating. And this would be like in the form of an injunction or a cease and desist order. A court could order directing a business to make specific facility improvements or changes, or the court could order fines against a business or entity. That's about all I have for this presentation. Like I said, this is a general overview of what the ADA, how the ADA covers individuals with substance use disorders. My project that I am the director of is with the Opioid Use Disorder Project. We offer free legal services to those affected by opioid use disorder. And that would be type of legal services we offer would be family law, Class C misdemeanors, and Class C misdemeanor warrant cleanup. We help with Social Security cases and expungements and non-disclosures as well. If you have any questions, I'll be free to answer. And if you think of something later, you can always email me. My email is there on the screen and it's also in the chat.
Well, thank you, Monica. Can you guys hear me well? All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I like the fact that you went through different scenarios kind of to give us an example. So different typical examples with individuals with disabilities. Do we have any questions, comments right now? Does anyone want to add anything? Okay, so we have a couple of questions here. We have if a job in the recovery field requires that someone pass a UA to be hired, a urine test, and be hired, and they fail for the MAT, medication-assisted treatment, they are on a violation of ADA?
I believe so. I would kind of need more specifics, but I believe so. I believe they would be covered under the ADA.
Any other questions or comments, or anyone has had any experience recently with a person who feels that their ADA rights may have been violated? You know, it's quite common.
This is Richard, and I had a question. So you were talking about housing and HUD. And so a situation where a person is denied housing based on the fact that they have a criminal past and because it was due to drug use or drug related, right? So, or if they're denied housing based on that, is that a ADA violation, or is just because many people have incarceration due to their addiction? I didn't know if that was related.
I believe that would be an ADA violation. I mean, you have to meet all the other requirements. But if it's just a criminal history and not current use, I believe that would be an ADA complaint they would be able to file with HUD.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Alexis, you had a question?
Yes, I know it doesn't really have to do with MOUD, but I have a client who has been denied a job placement because they tested positive on a urinalysis due to their mood altering medication. Is that also a violation? So they're prescribed it by a clinician, to help with depression, anxiety, and they've failed the drug test because of it.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be an ADA violation if it's something that's legally prescribed by a physician. I think it's something that you can file with either the EEOC or a lawsuit.
Okay, thank you for that.
And Abby?
Hi. I have heard from several of my mentees, I'm a recovery coach, that they are being denied recovery housing because they are currently on some form of MAT, Suboxone, that kind of a deal. So I'm very curious as to what are their rights in that regard.
I believe it would be an ADA claim that they can file with the Housing and Urban Development Division. If you need more information, I can send that to you. Just send me an email and I can forward you some more information.
Thank you.
And how often do these laws, these ADA regulations and law change? I mean, what type of modification or changes do they go through?
I'm not sure about how often that is. Yeah, I don't really have an answer for that. I'm not sure. That's a good question though. I'll look into that.
All right. No, and I'm sure also that because there are the federal ADA, and I know that state-wise, in each state, there are also ADA laws
Right.
and regulations.
Yeah, so it's all kind of different. But like I said, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
But if you have any other questions, I'm also available by email. If it's something I can't answer right away, I can provide some further answers by email.
Sure, thank you. And someone here is asking, a recovery home organization would have the right to accept who they want, correct? Like a recovery organization.
Yes, they can accept whoever they want. They don't have to necessarily follow those rules. They can go be more generous in that. They just need to stay within those rules. They can't violate the ADA. But yes, they can accept whoever they want.
Thank you.
This is Richard again. I had another question.
Yes.
So I just for clarity, because I've heard this for a number of years, an individual says, well, I'm protected under ADA. I have so addiction, it qualifies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will qualify for disability insurance or disability payments, right?
No.
Right?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And actually, so my background is mainly Social Security. I've done Social Security hearings for like 10 years, and they often deny people because of a current substance use issue. So any drugs and alcohol can't be the reason that a person can't work, but you have to show like a period of sobriety. So it's not an automatic, not an automatic just because you have an ADA claim that you have a disability claim under Social Security. There are different standards.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So someone here says, I'm familiar with a few sober livings that deny moved medication for opioid use disorder. Could the information to file with HUD be provided to all of us?
Yes, I will put some that together and I can send it to you and so you can kind of distribute it to the group.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments about this topic? All right, so if not, in the interest of time, we're going to move to the announcements, then we can pass to our case presentation. Thank you. Thank you again, Melissa. Please stay with us. Thank you. So Karen, we can go through announcements. Thank you. If you or someone in your organization has or is currently managing a difficult case, this is your opportunity to bring that case to the Recovery Support Services ECHO, a group of experts and also individuals and organizations with the community may give you some ideas and alternatives to manage that case. If you're interested in presenting a case with us, all you have to do is send us an email at bewelltexas.edu. Actually, bewelltexas@utesca.edu. Thank you. Next slide. And the PRIN, that's the Peer Recovery Innovation Network, is conducting a survey. PRIN is trying to expand the research, the recovery science field. And the way that they're trying to do is they want to engage people and know from all of you what are the areas in which recovery science is currently needing attention. So Karen is going to be dropping the survey on the chat, and any of you can answer this survey. It's going to be a great help for the brand, for the people of the Peer Recovery Innovation Network. Thank you. Next. And we are renewing our ECHO sessions for this recovery support services. So be on the lookout for a Zoom invite. It's the same process as we all our other Zoom invites. All you have to do is download the invitation in your calendars to make sure that you receive notifications and you will never miss one of our sessions. So be waiting for that email for your renewal. Thank you. Next. And this is for our webinar. This is a great webinar. This will be the fourth session. We're going to have Dr. Brittany Houston discussing COVID-19 compassion fatigue and enhancing provider resiliency. If you want to participate in any of these sessions, all you have to do is go to our cstat.utesca.edu website. You can register there. This is a great seminar. It's completely free, and we are offering CMEs and Cs. That's Wednesday, April 17th. We will see you there. Next slide, please. And next month, we'll have Jason Pullen discussing recovery housing and peer recovery support services. That's Wednesday, April the 24th. Thank you. And Joseph de la Cruz, if you could start discussing briefly your case, we are ready.
Yes, ma'am. Were they going to, good morning, everybody. Joseph de la Cruz, Aliviane RSS here in El Paso, Texas, personal long-term recovery. I was given the opportunity to present a case for all of us here, as everybody else gets the opportunity just to get some feedback on the work that we're all doing, which is a big purpose in the recovery field to help others. And as always, we always face challenges. We always face challenges amongst the different cases that we come across with. Every case is different, but I chose this case. It's going to be a 25-year-old female, Hispanic. This participant is one of mine. She is a person that has substance use disorder, which was methamphetamine use. Has an open active CPS case. Her children were placed with the grandmother due to the the drug use, and she was currently recently discharged. She was discharged from our residential facility, and she does keep community. She was enrolled in the RSS program with myself, and she does keep communication. And she was, before she went to treatment, I should have done it before, but before she made the treatment, she did make contact with us, requesting the assistance for help. So we did get her into the residential treatment for 90 days. She is doing the outpatient group, does recovery groups with myself, does face-to-face sessions, has good communication with via text messages, phone calls, and we also do conduct home visits on our participants. Some of the obstacles that she does have is struggling with transportation and seeking employment. She's currently living with the grandmother and 3 children. She's always still wanting to obtain stable employment and stable income to be able to provide for her children and herself with an apartment for the time being. But she was going through housing, and she was denied housing due to past criminal history, even though she hadn't had any convictions of a felony or anything. So, and then another obstacle that she does have is that her visa is expired. So it's difficult to obtain employment because of that. So some of the recovery capital that we've been working with is going to be that she's living with her grandmother. The kids are part of us as part of the safety plan, seeking employment close to the residence. So due that she does not have a vehicle at the time, she does attend her peer support groups with us, outpatients. She does her meetings weekly with her counselor, and she does have her face-to-face sessions with RSS or myself about weekly. And she also does work with her caseworker regarding her mental health as well. So some of the options that have been given to her to help her in the situation that she's in at the moment is that she's been introduced to the option of a shelter for herself and her children. She would like to begin the process again of housing and possibly appeal if the criminal history continues to be an issue, as she's, like I mentioned earlier, she's never been convicted of any crime. She's also been recommended to seek a part-time job where her children are at school, and myself or any of the other recovery coaches that are there to offer any guidance, motivation, and support in her pathway of recovery. I'm going to go back a little bit on one of the obstacles. One of the obstacles that she has as well is going to be one of my questions at the end of the case, is also that she has codependency on men. You know, she struggles a lot with in those aspects, and that's where you know, the SUD, it comes into play, where it's the environment that she puts herself in. And so what we're trying to do is promote any long-term recovery and all the options that are possible for her, and, you know, use that guidance, motivation, support, and also what we do in our experiences as a, you know, person in long-term recovery, on providing that hope that it is possible and it can be done. So to my the questions I have for everybody here in the ECHO community, it's going to be, has anybody had a case similar to this? Anybody want to chime in? Go ahead. I'm going to read the questions, and if you guys go back, we'll go back to it. So the first question I have in this case is going to be, has anybody had a case similar to this? Any suggestions as the participant struggles with relationships, which is basically being very codependent on men? And the last question I have that you guys can help me with, if anybody has any suggestion, is, can anybody provide any information on support groups, even if they're online, for relationships, to provide for our participant in our program? Like I said, I'm open to any questions, any suggestions, any questions you guys may have regarding the case. Like I said,
Joseph, quick
ma'am.
question. When you talk about codependency on men, could you explain a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
The easiest way I can put it, for everybody to understand with the codependency on men, is that he has been also basically a sex worker. So it becomes a vice as well. So that's where it comes in as part of the the sex worker trade as well with the SUD, and that's the environment that the children were exposed to at the time. So that is where that comes into play as well, with also the mental health part, because as she stated that she goes into manic stages because of the codependency on men and everything that comes with it. So that's a little bit more information, so you guys get a little bit more on understanding of what it is. I know a lot of you will understand what it is because it comes with the environment of a drug addiction or alcohol abuse, which is the sex trade.
The one thing I'll just kind of start with is, and thanks for the presentation, Joe. Great job. Interesting case for sure. And I threw a link in there. Richard and I, before the Echo today, talked about what might be some online options. And so in the rooms is a big one when it comes to just a wide array of online meetings and things that are out there. So there's some in there that were specific to codependency. There was another thing that's referred to as the TAR network, TAR, so toxic abusive relationships. It's kind of its own little 501c3 apparently, but they were listed on in the rooms as well. And they've got a meeting that goes, I can't remember what day it was on, maybe noon on Wednesdays or something like that. But anyway, so you can find that at that link. But with that work, and I know that there's all sorts of motivations and all sorts of different experiences when it comes to people engaging in sex work. But I guess for me, that raises a question of is some of the codependency and these other things that she's experiencing and living with and that may be challenging her recovery part of traumatic response in that type of work? Again, not knowing if it's something that she's totally fine with or if she's experienced some trauma on the way. But then when it comes to setting those healthy boundaries and coping with some of that stuff, I don't know if there's like a victim's crisis counseling, like trauma counseling, I guess is what I'm asking, is maybe that something more specialized when it comes to relationships and healthy boundaries and all that kind of stuff might be more appropriate than just traditional counseling or obviously like LCDC stuff outside the scope. But I mean, it just depends on what her experience and what her perspective is on that. But if it was local, and somebody I was working with, that might be a question I would ask. And we have some really great trauma counselors, but that's their niche. And I would send somebody, I have referred people from that have had that as part of their journey doing sex work specifically to those counselors, because they're just going to be able to get a lot more nuanced therapy in that than a traditional LMFT or somebody like that. So just some thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah. And it's been a bit difficult because like I said, this female, she is 25. I've known her since she's 19. So it becomes a bit difficult because you try to help as much as you can, and we're looking for the resources. I'm looking for different types of resources for her, and also I was an advocate for CPS being part of the safety plan. The safety plan, looking at the programming of recovery groups, programming for counseling, programming for recovery groups, outpatient groups, all that good stuff, and is also to be a guide while she was in the residential treatment center, to be part of the showing support, and so she can be open to all of the tools that were granted to her while she was in the residential treatment center.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, Joseph, my name is Christine. I'm from Bear County and I am a recovery support specialist. I do have experience with working with prostitution court here in Bear County, that's Esperanza Court. And a lot of our clients that we worked with were actually referred to MRT classes for the trauma to address some of those issues. A lot of our clients were seen by LPCs, so they were getting the treatment part of it. But I would also refer these ladies to CODA meetings online or wherever they were available, because I know that not sitting 12-step, they're out there and they're meeting other people, is just connecting them to the right type of treatment. I know it's challenging for these ladies, and but those were some of the things that we used as a treatment court in helping them connect to services. And I don't know if that's going to help. The TAR network I've never heard of, so thank you for sharing that. But that is something I really really like to hear more about, but I would think that maybe something like MRT would probably be a good resource for them.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
For the housing appeal, I know our office might be able to do an intake and possibly represent her for that. We do have an office in El Paso. And
Awesome.
I'll actually be out there next week. So we go to Punto de Partida on Dyer Street every
Yes.
the first and third Tuesday of the month. So I'll be there next week, and there's always somebody there first and third Tuesday of the month. We can do an intake there, or we can go to your organization and do an intake there. But if you want to email me, we can set that up for next week.
Yes, awesome. Yes, that way you can get a little bit more. You can get a little bit more familiar with what we're working with and see what we can do. See if maybe it's a possibility.
Okay, yeah, send me an email, monicagarza@trla.org, and we can set that up for next week.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank
Monica.
you. Thank you. Great. Who else? I think someone had her hand or his her hand up, and I probably didn't see it. Any questions? I think it was Kristen.
If you're calling on me, I don't have a question.
Okay, good. Thank you. Richard, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just saw a couple of hands pop up and then back down, but tons of resources in here. And I thought, yeah, Sean and I had talked about this a little bit before the session. We got a chance to look at the case. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's just a number of different areas that I wanted to point out. It looked like CODA for one, CODA, Texas, right, for codependency. I know, Sean, we put the one for in the rooms that are online. So did some other thoughts. I saw Sharon Hadley. Sharon, you had some, I guess,
Yeah.
And then Santa Maria looks like they have some special programs going on too.
Yeah, it's great
Yep.
to see all the resources and all the options that are being offered here in the chat. Joseph, currently, what type of resources are you or your organization offering? What type of support or alternatives are you offering to this person as of now?
Oh, like I said, we've been working with her for, like I said, I've known her for about 6 years. So our organization does offer, residential services, outpatient services, recovery support services. So at the moment, I actually did conduct a home visit yesterday, just to check on the well-being, spoke to the family, is doing well, and was able to, we do activities for our families that we help. And so I took some Easter baskets for her kiddos. So that's just to do a little bit of family inclusion. So I do talk to, authorized people that is allowed, which is her mother, where she lives with the mother, the grandmother, and just to keep that open dialogue with them so they can continue to show the support that they have from us, so we can count on their support since they live with her 24/7. We see her, once a week. She is very does communicate with myself and the other recovery coaches very frequently. So I think we're a little bit from where she started to where she is now, it's been a change. We just have to maintain that open communication dialogue and continue to show our support. And I think she's doing well. But like I said, there's many options that are available. I know that other online groups, 24/7 is another one that I utilize a lot as well for many other participants in the rooms, as well for people that I think that was mentioned to me, were people that are in parole. But like I said, the services are there. There's a lot of resources also for the mental health part. She does do mental health therapy and does take medication. So it's just continuing, because there's at times where she'll be, I don't want to take my medication, it makes me feel bad. Then you have to explain a little bit more of what the medication is for from what I read on her prescription and what it's going to be utilized for. So she will continue. It's just to show that support. It's just to show support on what it is that she needs.
Thank you. Damati, you wanted to say something?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a an addict in recovery. I have 13 years. I'm also an RSPS and working on my MHPS certification. And what I found in my past and also with working with peers and everything, the sex work is just as addicting as the drug. And so that it also, it needs to be addressed. And a lot of people don't realize that, that turns into trafficking or can. And so I don't know about there, but here we have quite a few resources as far as counseling for sex workers. We have programs for people that have been sex trafficked, because that plays a big part in everything. And also just the different trauma focused counselors here. It sounds like, and as far as the codependency on the methamphetamine, I don't know, here it seems to be that it's more like they can't function. We feel like we get into a situation where we feel like we can't wake up, we can't go to sleep, we can't function, we can't move, we can't do anything without using first, and then on top of that, you have the sex addiction and the codependency issues. And it's a spiral, a huge spiral. So yeah, I think the difficulty lies in just treating all of it at once, or trying to figure out what's the best way to treat what, when, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Timothy. It does make sense because one of the biggest things with, and now that you mentioned the sex trafficking part, it was to the point where when she was reaching out for help, she was being basically trafficked. She was at a hotel and she was being sent over different individuals by another person that was making contact with these individuals first and sending them to where she was located. So that's where she wanted the help, and that's where we were able to get her out of and push her, or not push her, get her into the residential treatment upon her request. And that's where she's told me before, like, if you were not showing up and taking me out, I don't know where I would have been and what would have happened, because it was getting to a point that she calls very dangerous.
Right. And the thing is, and what I've noticed as well, like in my past and also working with peers, like I said, is there seems to be kind of a click, right? So once someone realizes, hey, it's not really my choice anymore as far as the sex work, it's more of their being trafficked than it's their option, something tends to click. And then they're like, I need help, I gotta get out. And I've seen it over and over and over. And there's like nationwide assistance for people that have been sex trafficked. So that's
Yes.
definitely something to look into.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lindsay?
Sorry. I did want to mention that like it's, there are really good resources for, therapy, but I think it's also kind of important just to realize that like part of learning how to interact with other people, right, is just about getting out there doing it. So I think one of the best things that people can do is really invite people, the peers that they're working with, to social situations, to social gatherings, and not just with people in recovery, right? With everybody. We need to be including them in our communities and our community events. And that really will help facilitate that interaction with other people, and that you just kind of, that many of us did not learn how to do properly, right? Due to the substance use.
Yes.
Thank you. Christine?
This question is for Joseph. Joseph, did you say she had a criminal history? Is she on probation or any type of probation right now?
No, nothing. She's been charged with different crimes, never convicted of any of them.
Never convicted?
All she has is arrests on her record. That's what baffled me when she was denied her housing, because there's no convictions, but the appeal was there, and of course procrastination came into play, and the appeal was not met for the deadline. So we've discussed on trying housing again, and now that Monica had mentioned about working with housing and stuff, so that's going to be our next goal.
And what is preventing her from getting into housing? Is it the substance abuse, or because I'm trying to figure this out? You said she has a visa and that's been expired. I don't know, it's identity, or And I know that the housing situation is an issue. That's what I'm hearing, because she's trying to find somewhere to go, right? And because they denied her the housing, that's preventing her. But what other obstacles is she facing? Is it not having that visa?
The only obstacle that came across for the housing part, the reason was due to her criminal history.
Criminal
Nothing
history.
else of substance abuse, because the substance abuse she's been in recovery for the past since October. She's been clean. She has her children. It's just that's the only reason they gave. So it was, and that's when she had mentioned that all she has is charges, no convictions. And I printed the paperwork for her for the appeal process, gave her some guidance and on how to write what she had told me in better sense of words, and she never sent it. So at the
Oh,
moment, it's just procrastination.
okay, yeah.
So right
Okay.
now I talked to her yesterday, and now it's she lives with her parents, with her mother, but her mother lives with their siblings, and she has 3 kids. So I'm like, it's 2 families, and of course it's gonna be difficult. So she does do work here and there, and does get paid cash for, I think, cleaning houses with her sister. So at the moment, we're going to try again to do the housing part and see if it'll go through with, hopefully, maybe with the help of Miss Garza here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Joseph, Nick here. I'm wondering, is it possible to get that visa renewed?
I think it is, but due to, I think what she had mentioned, because of the criminal history, it's a big mess. So I couldn't, honestly, Nick, I couldn't give you a straight answer, but I know that her visa is right. I need to look into a little bit more on that and see where what resources we can link her to help her renew the visa.
Joseph, yeah, go ahead,
Yes, ma'am.
please. Rachel.
I was gonna ask Joseph, I know Goodwill around here has job training programs that help with getting documentation. Do y'all have a Goodwill there that has similar programs in place?
We do have a Goodwill here in town, and I'm not sure. I can check. Now that you tell me, I'm gonna look into it though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good option to consider as well, of course. You wanted to say something, Christine, again? I see your hand raised.
I apologize, but one of the things that I've seen for many years is people that have felony charges coming out of the criminal justice system. I worked special courts for 15 years, and those felony charges have the hardest time finding housing. And I don't know if that's Monica, some question for Monica later, but I know Richard touched something on that, and I might have misunderstood, but that is one of the challenges that as a coach coming in, is that a lot of people are asking, do you know any felony friendly apartments? Because a lot of apartment complexes do not want people with felonies, even if it's for substance abuse disorders. And it doesn't really leave them too much of an option, but a sober home. And if they're not open to sober living, then where do they go?
Johnny Hatton.
Hey, Joe, I just had a question for you
Yes,
because
sir.
I'm not all that familiar with the entire process of visas. So I guess there's 2 questions. One, is the visa simply for employment? And then 2, does not having is she considered a citizen right now? Like not having the visa, would that put her citizenship in status? Her citizenship
No, she
status
was.
in jeopardy.
So we live in El Paso. El Paso is a border city to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. It's literally 5 minutes away. She was born in Juarez and lived her whole life in El Paso. Because of the place she was born, she's considered a Mexican national.
Right. So I'm from El
So
Paso.
she had a visa, did do anything regarding. Oh, cool. Yeah. So you know how is, Johnny, we live right next to Juarez.
Yes, sir.
And I guess she was born in Juarez and she's lived her whole life in El Paso. So that's what's preventing. And like I said, like I was mentioning earlier, the whole visa situation, I need to look a little bit more into it, see what resource I can help her with. But I know I don't think she's considered a citizen.
Well, I asked you that because I just happened just yesterday. I don't really follow the news a lot, but I just happened to hear yesterday that, Texas is really pushing to be able, to arrest and pick up people and, send people back, across the border, if they can't verify their citizenship or if for some reason their citizenship is in question. And sometimes even without and some, according to what I read, sometimes they don't even really have to, authorities don't even really have to have cause. They can just stop and ask. And so when you mentioned, the criminal history stuff and then the trouble she's already having, that came to my mind as a concern. So, maybe, in addition to the employment and the housing piece, might really want to think about how to get that visa taken care of, so she doesn't run into,
Yeah.
an even bigger issue.
Yeah, like I said, that's one of our goals that we have is priority would be the housing for herself and her children, also the visa as well. Because if I think the last time she had gone into trouble, they had told her we can't deport you if because of the visa. Unfortunately, they were able to, I think, get on probation, but she's still here. So she's, like I said, all are American citizens. So, and yeah, that law there was a law coming in that they wanted to, start arresting people. But like I said, politics is one of those subjects that it's kind of hard and it's rough. Politics and religion is one of those subjects that there's never going to be an end to it. But like I said, our main goal is housing, and also. But I'm gonna look into Johnny to see exactly what we can do to help her with the resources to obtain her visa, or put it back to standard to be okay.
Thank you, Joseph. Okay, so in the interest of time, we would like to see if our hub expert Richard, he can give us like a summary of today's session and maybe a couple of suggestions, taking into consideration all the resources that we discussed about and we share in the chat today.
Wow.
Richard.
Yeah, thanks. It's my pleasure to do so. I do hope that most, or if not everyone, had their chat open. There were just a ton of resources, and I was glad to see Jasmine was talking, one of our other team members, that make sure that she includes all of those resources and everything that's in the chat. We thank you so much for that. And Monica Garza, thank you. That's so important. That's a piece that gets overlooked so many times, is the ADA, and just and where we are and the challenges that we have, and to know that Texas Rio Grande Legal has those resources available to help those. I know it's really impactful for many, especially those who are experiencing homelessness or and just don't have the resources in the community to get the protection that they need, the legal protection and the access to that. So we're really grateful that you do that. And the fact that you're working with the TTOR program, or the opioid use disorder, and helping those individuals is just even that much better. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your presentation, your didactic. And Joe, good case. It's interesting. We finally kind of got the groove a little bit, and just like I think what you're doing is just in the case presentation itself is your work is just right on. I thought, though, it was interesting when we started looking at the codependency pieces of that, and then also some really good thoughts on just and I can't remember Tamitha or Kath, I think, that mentioned something about just the sex workers, and just that in itself. The addiction that is there, just the dependency on that, and so she really brought up some really good points. But the codependency, the resources, Coda Texas, Smart Recovery. Apparently, a lot of. I don't have personal experience with that, but I know others who do, and just really rave about it. And it's a good way to address some of the codependency pieces. So I just really want to thank everyone for participating, and thank you. It's
Yeah.
Good day, good echo. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this case. It was great to have those resources out there and the support of the ECHO community and any case that we can present and just to help each other out with the purpose of recovery.
Yeah. You know, one other thing, yeah, good. It's Sean had put it in the chat too. And that would have been the TAR, or the toxic and abusive relationships in the rooms. A lot of resources there just on that alone. So they do have a standing meeting on Mondays, and then also just a lot of other resources. So that's all virtual, of course. But yeah, there you go.
Well, it has been a great conversation. Thank you to Monica Garza, our speaker. Thank you again for a great presentation. Thank you to Joseph de la Cruz for his case. I think it prompted to a great discussion, and we'll see you all next month. Thank you and have a great rest of the evening. Bye.
Thank you.